Hi guys, welcome to the Collegepreneur Podcast, the podcast that interviews college student startups about their origin, current successes, and goals for the future. Today, I spoke with Sorin, the founder of Idori. Idori is a startup that sells sustainable stuffed animals and books for kids with the intent to make kids more conscious and caring for the environment through fictional characters that represent the ocean, the land, and the air on Earth. In today's episode, Noah and I discuss how over the course of the past 3.5 years, Noah was able to take his passion for educating others on sustainability into now a thriving movement where he is educating kids through the medium of plushed animals and books about the importance of the environment and sustainability. Enjoy the episode. Hi Noah, thanks for coming to Collegepreneur today. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Before we get into anything else today, can you give me the elevator pitch for Idori?
Yes, absolutely. So Idori, which stands for I Dream of Real Impact, makes educational resources that teach kids about sustainability. So in early childhood psychology, kids often develop habits, behaviors, and biases as early as 9 years old, yet often aren't taught about climate change or sustainability until the early years of high school. So to combat this issue, I use fun storytelling, characters, games, toys, and online platforms to help teach kids about sustainability in a way that's fun, engaging, and meaningful.
That's awesome. So with having a sustainable kids sphere of products and educational resources, if you will, what inspired you to start Idori? Is there a personal background that's inspired you to do Idori? Anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in this really rural town in northern Vermont called Montgomery, and I grew up on an organic vegetable farm on top of a mountain in the middle of nowhere.
Awesome.
So I spent the entirety of my childhood outdoors with my siblings, hiking, gardening, camping, kayaking, really just learning to love and appreciate nature. And it was so critical to developing my values and instilling what I'm passionate about. And sustainability was always kind of second nature to me. So things like composting, recycling, conserving energy, conserving water, those were always things that I just kind of built into my routine and I never really thought too much about. But when I moved to Boston for my college education, I realized that not everyone has opportunities like that. I was actually really privileged to grow up in an environment where I had so many opportunities to see how magical and beautiful nature was, and that's what drove me to care so much about protecting it. So, I wanted to find ways to make that experience, that fun, whimsical beauty of nature more accessible to people who maybe didn't grow up in a rural area on top of a mountain. So, I thought, what were other things that I could do maybe inside of a home that would still make me feel that kind of magical wonder of curiosity and creativity? And I thought of the children's books that I read growing up. I thought of the toys that I played with and the games that I played on my computer. And I thought, well, if those are the things that, brought me so much creativity, brought me so much fun and curiosity, why don't I use those things to make people care more about the environment? So that's where Idori really started.
Awesome. So with Idori being as significant as it is today, you've been working on it for around 3.5 years, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, so my freshman year, I joined this fellowship program at BU called the First Year Innovation Fellowship. And basically, it's a program designed for freshmen just to get them into entrepreneurship. And they basically give you $500 to pick a problem that you really care about and go out into the world and interview a bunch of people to really learn something interesting about that problem. And at a very broad level, I cared about sustainability, and I knew that I wanted to do something within education. But it was only after speaking with a bunch of parents and speaking with a bunch of my friends and even a bunch of kids from all different age ranges that I realized that early childhood education was really where you can make the most significant impact, because that's when kids are the most curious, they're the most malleable, they have the most to learn, and they want to learn the most, and you just have to give them the resources that will guide them in the right direction.
Interesting. How were you able to know that early childhood education was the best place to go? You referenced malleable, and you also mentioned around 9 years old most habits and tendencies form. Could you speak more on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it started out, I was thinking I just want to teach people at my own university. So I started simple with this idea of I'm just going to try and teach my friends about sustainability. Some of my friends grew up in more urban environments. Some of them cared a lot about nature. Some of them didn't care about nature at all. And, it was just simple things. I would ask them oh, do you know how to recycle? And then if they didn't, I would teach them all right, this goes in the recycling bin and this doesn't. But trying to teach, people who are 20 years old to change their daily habits was really difficult. And I started to ask myself, why is this the case? So then I started doing research into, when do habits really develop? How young are you when you really start to, instill behaviors that are going to last for maybe the rest of your life, because changing habits is so difficult. And that's when I kind of realized that kids develop habits really young. And I found online research. I started speaking with early childhood education professors at BU. I started interviewing, kindergarten, preschool. I went back to my old elementary school in Montgomery, and I spoke to a bunch of the teachers, and they even allowed me to talk to I think around 20 kids from kindergarten through third grade, which was a really fun experience. I learned so much about kind of what makes kids care about nature versus not care about nature so much. And ultimately what I realized is that kids have so much to learn, and they're so spongy. They're constantly soaking in information, and everything that they hear and see and smell and feel has an effect on the way that they think. And I kind of wanted to capture that sponginess and turn it into something meaningful that would have a positive impact on the planet.
Awesome. So to follow up with a previous point you made, you started through Innovate BU in your freshman year. What did those first initial steps look like to taking Idori from an idea to something tangible and off the ground?
Yeah, so like I said before, the first year innovation fellowship, they really emphasize customer discovery. So just going out and talking to a ton of people. And that's when I did interviews with the professors, with the teachers, with parents, with kids. And after I interviewed, somewhere between 20 to 50 people, then I started to come up with solutions. And it didn't start with a book and a stuffed animal. It started with a bunch of different things. I came up with the idea of doing a subscription box that would come with different hands-on kits to help kids learn how to plant a tree or turn an old piece of paper into a new piece of recycled paper that you could draw on again. And the more that I looked into it, the more that I realized that that's really complicated. And every kid loves different kinds of activities, which would make it really difficult to create a series of subscription boxes that would have a substantial impact on behaviors. So then, I was speaking with some of my friends actually, and I was asking them what do you remember from your childhood being the most engaging? What did you pick up and you really just loved? Because one of the things that I learned when talking to early childhood educators is that kids are only going to develop behaviors if something is relatable to them, if it's repeated a lot, if it's something that's fun and engaging for them. You can't just give a kid a textbook and expect them to develop a bunch of behaviors. You have to you have to actively engage them with hands-on activities, fun resources. And ultimately, I stumbled across the Waldorf teaching model, the 3H teaching method, which stands for head, heart, and hands. And basically it says that if you want kids to internalize something and to develop certain behaviors, you need to stimulate them mentally, emotionally, and physically. And one of my friends was well, Webkinz was really innovative and amazing because it allowed kids to do something online that was mentally stimulating, and it also had a physical, tangible toy for the kids to touch, and it made the characters feel so much more real and meaningful. And I thought, that's so true. So I wanted to create not just an online resource or not just activity books, but I wanted to create, a series of resources that would really touch the head, heart, and hands portion of the Waldorf teaching method. And I really loved that idea of Webkinz, of having a stuffed animal, something very tangible that we can hug, except kids already love animals. Something I learned when interviewing, all those little kids is that one thing about sustainability that every kid can get behind is let's protect endangered species, because all kids love rhinos and tigers and lions and all the animals that they go and see at the zoo, but it's a lot harder for them to conceptualize loving trees or loving the ocean or loving the clean air that we breathe. So I created these three characters: Gibo the puffball, who teaches kids about air pollution and climate change; Flo the ocean dweller, who teaches kids about the dangers of single-use plastic and ocean conservation; and Benji the tree hopper, who teaches kids about deforestation and how to protect, biodiverse ecosystems. And it took a lot of kind of pivoting and iterating the idea, but ultimately I arrived at this model of using a hands-on or a physical plush toy to help emotionally stimulate them and make them feel an emotional connection to an aspect of the environment. And then a picture book, which is mentally kind of teaching them a basic aspect of sustainability. Not in a way of here's where all single-use plastics come from, but this idea that when you throw something away, it doesn't just disappear. And if it ends up in the ocean, that can harm ecosystems. Or in the tree hopper book, it's just this simple idea that we use trees for a lot of reasons. We cut down trees for agriculture. We use it to build houses, and we clear land for urbanization, but if we cut down too many trees, then our friends like Benji the tree hopper and all of the other wonderful characters that live in the forest will no longer have a place to live and to play. So those are the kinds of ideas that I was playing off of. And then the third component is what I call a learning roadmap, which is actually giving them hands-on activities to practice sustainable habit development. So this will be like going outside and hugging a tree, or building a shelter for animals, or doing a gardening project where you actually go and like plant something and get your hands in the dirt, or, the list goes on and on. There's so many ways to get kids outdoors and to get them engaging with nature in a meaningful way.
That's awesome. So you did all this research. How did you start developing these products, books, roadmaps, stuffed animals? It doesn't just come out of thin air. What did that process look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So after I finished the first year innovation fellowship, I joined BU's innovation pathway, which is basically kind of like the next step in providing you with like mentoring, coaching, curriculum, and obviously some funding. And at that point, I had enough to make some prototypes. It was just a matter of like, how do I actually make those prototypes? So I have always been super passionate about creative writing. And actually in high school, I received recognition from the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards for my poetry portfolio. So I felt pretty confident that I was going to be capable of writing a children's book on my own. But I love art and I love arts and crafts. I am not necessarily the most like artistically talented person that I've ever met. So I knew that I wanted to find someone more talented than me to help illustrate the first books. So I actually started, talking to friends, trying to figure out if I could find an artist. I did organic networking and I found a few people who were okay at illustration, but nothing that really sparked that kind of like whimsical beauty that I was really going for, that I knew would like capture awe and the imaginations of the kids that would be using my resources. So ultimately, I used $100 that I had left from the first year innovation fellowship to host an art competition. And I posted flyers all over campus that said, win $100 by submitting a sustainability-themed alien or monster. And then in really tiny font at the bottom, I said, like, and the winner will have the opportunity to work on this really amazing startup project. And I got about like 5 or 6 submissions after like literally spending so much time just putting these all over campus. They actually, one of the departments in the College of Fine Arts sent me an angry email saying that I had not been permitted to put up so many flyers in their hallways and that I needed to take them down immediately. But thankfully, I got 5 or 6 applications before they all got taken down. And one of them, her name is Shumita Littlefield, was just truly like really like this beautiful character that was like picking up trash, and it really just kind of like I had an instant moment of being like, wow, like this is sparking that imagination, that creativity, that curiosity that I know is going to be an integral part of my brand. So I sent her an email and we set up a time to get coffee, and I kind of explained to her what I wanted to do with this project. And after an hour or so, we became partners, and this was now almost 3 years ago, and we've been working together ever since, which has been a really amazing partnership. We actually just went to the annual winter conference for the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators together in New York City. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm really thankful that I found someone so talented so early on. And then for the stuffed animals, this was actually a bit more of kind of like a miraculous, like, opportunity that I came across. The winter break after I had met Shumita, I went back to my house for break, and my parents had one of their friends over, and their daughter, who at the time was a junior at Rhode Island School of Design over in Providence, and she was studying industrial design with a minor in toy design. And I was telling her about the books and showing her some of the early illustrations, and she was like, this is amazing. I love the mission. I love the idea. How can I support you? And I was like, well, actually, you study toy design. I would love some advice on like how to get some toy versions of these characters made. And she said, well, actually, I'm doing an independent project for one of my classes next semester, and I feel like this would be the perfect project. And then she went and asked her professor, and she got approved to make these 3 stuffed animals as a part of her project. And, the rest is history. She made these awesome. 3 amazing designs, awesome. And I'll show you real quickly one thing that I think is really special about
please do.
the way that she made these stuffed animals is that each one is extremely interactive. And not only is It's super
No
fun
way.
and cozy and huggable, but it also makes it so much more engaging for the kids because they're more likely to pick it up, they're more likely to hug it, they're more likely to act out the different parts of the story, which just makes them more connected to the narrative and the storytelling that's going to ultimately convince them to adopt more sustainable behaviors. So
For audio listeners, what did you just do with your stuffed animal?
So the back of the stuffed animal has 2 holes in the back of the arms where you can actually reach your arms through, which makes it like a full body puppet, which is something super innovative that I haven't seen in any other stuffed animal. It's not necessarily patent pending, but I do think that it's a really amazing design, and I've seen in classrooms that kids really do love it, and they hug it, and sometimes honestly they're not even listening to the story because they're too busy in the back fighting over the stuffed animals.
It's a good problem to have, not a bad one.
Not a bad problem.
So speaking of classrooms, now that you've created all of your materials and resources, if you will, for Idori, what did the next steps look like for like getting Idori outside of just Innovate BU and into classrooms or early education spaces?
So it's actually so fun. Early on, so when Alia finally finished the stuffed animals, she sent me a picture, and I was like, oh my God, those are the most adorable things I've ever seen in my entire life. And instantly I asked her when she could, drive over from Providence and drop them off in Boston. And I brought her out to lunch, and we had a good conversation, and she handed me these 3 beautiful little characters that you see before you today. And I was so excited. So I went home that night, and I bought a giant poster board, and with all my friends, I wrote sustainable story time in like big colorful letters with a bunch of like cute little nature illustrations around it. And the next day I went to Boston Commons with a table. I put the sign that said sustainable story time on the table. I lined up my stuffed animals. I had ordered 10 copies of the book that I had lined up. I even brought like some lemonade and some compostable cups for kids to drink out of so that I had like lots of ways to attract kids. I even brought my juggling clubs so that, if kids weren't coming over to the table, I could do something more fun and engaging to attract some attention to myself. And, after setting up the table and, doing a little bit of juggling, I got a crowd of like 6 to 10 kids around, and I read the book for the first time, and I handed them the stuffed animal and watched them play with it. And it was such a rewarding experience to see that something I had worked so hard on for like a year just to develop prototypes was actually something that kids were enjoying and resonating with and having a meaningful experience with. So then I was just like so motivated to like put my head down and really like get these resources out into the world, not just to teach kids about loving nature and sustainability and developing those behaviors, but also to get feedback so that I could improve my craft, improve my product offerings, and really offer something that would have as meaningful of an impact as possible. Idori stands for I Dream of Real Impact because really the purpose of this entire brand is to drive real environmental change through early childhood education. And after that reading, I went to a few local preschools in the Boston area. I had great experiences there. When I studied abroad in Sydney, Australia, I was actually able to go to a handful of preschools in Sydney and read my books there, which was great because I got like a very different cultural perspective on environmentalism from, the opposite side of the planet. And we have a lot to learn from Australia because their preschool classrooms already integrate a lot of nature and sustainability into them. But it was a great experience. And now I actually have a partnership with Boston Outdoor Preschool Network, which is an amazing way for me to I go in twice a week and I work with the kids. It's entirely outdoors. So we spend most of our time jumping around in puddles, rolling down hills, throwing snowballs at each other in the wintertime. It's really such a fun job. And then obviously I use my resources to teach them about deforestation and climate change and plastic pollution, but not in a way that gives them climate anxiety, in a way that's empowering and inspiring them and showing them that they can be the difference that they want to see in the world.
Nice. So actually, speaking of being in the preschool environment, what are you learning nowadays every time you go in to a classroom? Because after so long, are there certain habits you've picked up on, tendencies, ways to be more engaging with preschool students, since that is your primary audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the main things that I learned really early on is if I want to create a holistic educational approach to teaching kids about sustainability, it's not going to be achieved with one product or one series of products. maybe some kids love stuffed animals, but maybe other kids don't. Maybe some kids love picture books, but maybe some kids don't. Some kids love online games. Some kids love arts and crafts. Some kids love hands-on activities. Like, for example, I was just at the preschool this morning, and, in 1 hour, I painted, and we, ran around in circles and played tag, and then we did story time, and then we went on a nature hike, and then we all used magnifying glasses to look at different things in the trees. And, it just kind of like, it's examples like that show me that there needs to be a lot of different ways for kids to engage that cover all different like disciplines and areas that will make it interesting for them, because every kid is different and unique and has their own curiosities and their own passions. So I want to provide products that align with each different child's, personal preferences, so that every kid, no matter what they like the most to play with, has an opportunity to learn about nature in a way that's fun and meaningful.
Nice. So continuing on the topic of preschoolers and like that being your primary audience, what impact have you seen from Idori like happen to these preschoolers? Essentially, I guess that's poorly worded, but like, yeah, the impact that Idori is giving.
Yeah, so I mean, from like a kind of like zoomed out perspective, I think I've definitely seen like kids just afterwards being like, wait, trees are important? Like we can't just like, pull off branches and like rip off bark. Like those like kind of like first understanding of like, whoa, I didn't realize that so many forests were getting cut down, or like, oh, I never thought about like, where does this plastic bottle end up after I throw it away? So really just seeing them kind of ask those initial questions.
Right.
I don't think that necessarily Idori needs to be a brand that teaches children about every aspect of sustainability. Sustainability is extremely nuanced. It's a super complex topic. There's so many different elements to consider, but what Idori really serves, like what I am looking to provide, is just that initial curiosity, really just showing kids that nature is something beautiful and that they need to appreciate and want to protect. And if they have that intrinsic desire to protect nature, they'll seek out the information on their own on how to do that as they get older. So, like one example of something like tangible that I've seen that's been really meaningful is when I was in Australia, actually, I was doing a preschool reading, and this was actually a crazy coincidence. I was working at the Social Enterprise Council of New South Wales and ACT, which was like basically a startup hub for nonprofits and social enterprises. And through that network, I met a teacher at this school, and I went in and I brought my resources, and I did a reading, and I did some activities with the kids. We did an art project together, and something that was a crazy coincidence is the daughter of my boss happened to be at that preschool, and I had no idea that this was going to happen. So she sees me walk in, and she's like, oh my God, I know that guy. And she like runs up and she gives me a hug, and I'm already like, all right, this is awesome. I have like a personal connection with one of them. It's going to make it a lot easier to kind of like break the ice and make the other preschoolers comfortable with, a stranger coming in and offering his book and his resources. And she was absolutely in love with the story and with the stuffed animal and all of the activities that we did. And it's always good to see kids having fun, but it's hard to know, like, did this actually have an impact?
Right.
And a few days later, I saw my boss, and I had talked about how I went in and I saw her daughter, and she was like, oh my God, that's why my daughter Harry came home and couldn't stop talking about how much she loves trees. And I was like, wow. Oh, that's so cute. That's amazing. And she goes, no, you don't understand. She actually set up a little cardboard bin next to our recycling where she puts paper that still has space to draw on, and she will not put a piece of paper in the recycling bin until she's used like every square inch of space on that piece of paper. And that truly warmed my heart, because that was literally me seeing like, wow, a kid actually changed their behaviors based off of one preschool visit, which is normally not something that you would expect. Most of the research that I did with early childhood educators really said that there needs to be so much repetition to actually lead to like real behavior change. So obviously that's biased because, she had more of a personal connection because she knew who I was, but that was me for the first time really hearing like, wow, a kid actually made a tangible behavioral change based on the experience that she had with my resources. And that was really amazing to see.
That's really inspiring. So with Idori today, there's a lot of moving pieces, it sounds like. What are the main goals and objectives right now?
So I would say like the main thing that I'm focused on right now is community engagement and getting these resources out into the world so I can collect as much feedback as possible and also get as many people to join this movement as possible. Because at the end of the day, I'm not just trying to sell products. I'm really trying to like start a movement towards making environmental education and sustainability and a love for nature a more integral part of every child in the United States or even globally, a part of their childhood. And, the way to do that is starting locally, starting with the preschools in Boston, starting with going into local libraries, going to public parks and just doing readings to meet as many parents, to get my resources in front of as many kids, to get feedback. And then also, I'm planning on launching a Kickstarter campaign in the next few months. And obviously, the more people that are aware of my brand, the more people I have on my email newsletter, the easier it will be for me to raise the money that I need to actually go ahead and purchase my first like large batch of inventory to start selling these in the U.S.
All right. And what does that look like more in depth? What are you purchasing exactly? You have your stuffed animals, you have your books.
Yeah. So basically, the first product that I'm looking to offer is a 3-piece package with an element for each part of the Waldorf 3H teaching model.
Right.
So for the head, heart, and hands. So it's a combination of a plush toy for the emotional connection, the picture book for the mental stimulation, and then what I call a learning roadmap, which is basically like a double-sided 1-page piece of paper that has a bunch of activities for kids to do that will teach them about the environment, and then also like instructions for parents on the back on how to actually like successfully teach your kid about some of these concepts without going too into depth of some of the complexities and some of the more like climate anxiety inducing stuff about sustainability. So this 3-piece package, I'm planning on listing it on my website for $49.99. And, one of the challenges with being a sustainability focused company and operating in the book publishing space and in the stuffed animal manufacturing space is that traditionally these are two really unsustainable industries. Book printing has so much paper waste. I literally have a book about deforestation, which seems completely counterintuitive because you have to cut down trees to make paper. But I found this really amazing company based in India called Bears for Humanity. And it's actually a nonprofit. So for every stuffed animal that gets purchased from them, they donate one to an underprivileged family, which first of all is an amazing social mission. But also I've spoken with the founder a few times, and he really cares about being natural and organic and making things with the resources from the earth so that they can return to the earth. So they don't use any plastics in their products. They only print their books on recycled or bamboo paper with completely herbal, biodegradable, eco-soluble dyes. All of the stuffed animals are made out of 100% organic cotton, and it's all sourced from local from like over 20 local co-op farms from around India, so it's supporting fair trade labor, and all of these farms are audited to make sure they have the most sustainable like water irrigation practices, crop rotation to make sure they're not taking too many nutrients out of the soil. Like it's really like holistically a very sustainable and ethical company. But on the counter, it makes things a lot more expensive, and it makes the minimum order quantity much higher. So right now I'm looking at a cost per book of around $4 and a cost per stuffed animal of around $11, and that'd be for 12-inch, so they'd be a bit smaller than the ones you see right here. And so that's $15 in raw cost per unit, and their minimum order quantity is 2,000 units. So 2,000 times 15, that's $30,000 to get started, and that's not including shipping it to the U.S., fulfillment, storage, distribution, etc. So I'm currently looking to fundraise about $50,000. I'll likely set my Kickstarter at a significantly lower price point because I'm not sure if you know how Kickstarter works, but if you don't reach your fundraising goal, then it returns all of the funds. So, it's better to set a lower limit and to exceed your goal than to set a really high limit and not reach your goal. So that's kind of what I'm working towards.
That's really interesting. You don't even get partial revenue if you were to be $1,000 away. What would that look like?
I haven't read all of the terms and conditions, but from my understanding, like kind of the main purpose of Kickstarter, specifically with like books and toy brands, is that it's whatever amount you need to order like that minimum order quantity. So I think Kickstarter's philosophy there is like if you need $30,000 to purchase your first batch of inventory and you only raise $20,000, you're not able to order that first batch of inventory.
Right.
So therefore, it's better to just send people's money back to them so that they're not waiting on a promise that's likely not going to be fulfilled. So obviously, if I'm only able to raise like 15 or 20,000 on Kickstarter, then maybe I could take out a loan. You know, I could talk to some more friends and family, try to bootstrap some, maybe just like save up some of my personal funds for a few months working, you know, a part-time job or something like that. But, you know, these are obviously things you want to balance, because you also don't want to only get 10,000 and then be 20,000 away, and suddenly you have 1,000 people who pre-ordered your product on Kickstarter who aren't going to be able to get it because you can't raise the rest of the money you need. So it's kind of an interesting balance, and a big reason that I haven't launched my Kickstarter yet. So many people are like, oh, you have the prototypes, you have the products, like launch the Kickstarter, you're ready to go, is I want to make sure that I have the community to back the Kickstarter campaign before I even launch it, so that I can say with certainty that when I launch the Kickstarter campaign, I'll be able to raise the funds that I need in order to be able to purchase that first batch of inventory without having to worry about, you know, like coming up shy.
That's a really strategic approach. No? Nice.
Thank you.
So, aside from like logistics per se, how big is Idori's team? Because it sounds like you have your illustrator, you have yourself. Is that it? Is there more people to the team?
No, so I would say at the core of the team, it really started out with Shumita and I as partners, and then Alia, who was the RISD student who made the stuffed animals. She was kind of more of a contractor. She now has a really great job at this really cool aerospace company doing awesome stuff.
Nice.
But she doesn't necessarily have time to be a full-time team member. I still check in with her somewhat regularly. I just spoke with her a couple weeks ago and, you know, got on the same page, told her about the progress that we were making, and she still provides like some advising, I guess, about kind of like what she would recommend in terms of like toy productions, and she just wants to stay in the loop because she's also, you know, like a part of this project. But I would say like actually like on the core team, Shumita and I are kind of like at the top as the founder / CEO, and then the head of creative design and illustration. And then we've actually worked for the past year and a half to actually build up our team by getting more Boston University students. I actually call them ambassadorians, which is, you know, no pun intended, except it was fully intended.
Yep.
And we're actually 25 strong, and
wow.
You know, these are varying roles. So, you know, I have some people who help with things like writing blog posts, which is like I'll always take more content from my website that talks about like how parents can teach their kids sustainable habits, and other people are doing much larger projects like, for example, Wayne, one of my current ambassadorians, is developing an online game to teach kids about deforestation, and it's in the theme of Benji the Tree Hopper.
Awesome.
And he actually just finished the first like beta version of the game, so we're currently working on getting that put up on our website so we can start collecting some feedback on it. But that just gives you kind of a taste of some of the different like ranges of projects that we have working on. Some of my team members will come visit schools with me and do readings with me. Some of them will help with social media content. Some of them are working on producing like a video commercial that will ultimately become a part of our Kickstarter campaign. And they also help with like outreach and engagement. So like creating lists of schools that we could go visit, reaching out to libraries, toy stores, stuff like that. So, you know, collectively, we're a very big team, but I think that kind of speaks to the fact that, again, what I'm trying to start is really a movement, and that so many people see the value of environmental education and the importance of showing kids how beautiful and important nature is at a young age, and just the fact that so many people have offered to help out, have offered to write a blog post, to help run the social media, to write a jingle, to, you know, help produce a video, really shows me that I'm doing something that matters to people. And, you know, I hope that I can create the impact that so many people believe Idori can make.
That's really inspiring, Noah. So, with all of that set aside, what are Idori's more immediate and long-term goals? It sounds like we have the Kickstarter coming up, getting Idori out there in the community. What else?
So, very, very busy semester for Idori. One of our alternative fundraising strategies, just to kind of make sure that we're not completely dependent on a successful Kickstarter campaign to be able to launch the business, is applying for pitch competitions and accelerator programs. So I've previously participated in the BU Summer Accelerator, which provided $10,000 in funding, and the Mash Challenge Accelerator program, which does not provide any direct funding, but it does allow me to compete in alumni pitch competitions in future years. And then this semester, I'm actually competing in the BU New Venture competition, the Holt Prize, the Northeastern is running a pitchathon competition, and there's also a hospitality innovation competition at BU. And each of these have prizes ranging from like $3,000 to $20,000, depending on, you know, obviously what place you end up getting in the competition. But obviously, like, winning any of those would have a significant impact on the amount of money that we would need to raise in the future. So I'm working really hard on kind of finalizing my pitch decks, making sure that I'm submitting all of these applications on time. And, you know, my team members have been helping out with, like, giving me feedback on my pitch decks, making sure that I'm all ready to go and prepared when the pitch competitions actually come around. And then the other, like, immediate step is really focusing on getting into as many schools as possible in the Boston area to kind of, like, start to scale our local and regional impact. So I have a meeting this Friday, actually, with Catherine Walsh, who is the Director of Sustainability for Boston Public Schools. And my plan in that meeting is really to formulate some type of strategy or campaign where I would be able to visit, say, 1 or 2 different schools each week and do a reading, engage the kids with my resources, speak with teachers, and really just kind of build that grassroots movement through local community engagement and get as many parents and teachers, you know, to follow the Instagram, to join the newsletter, to become a part of this Idori mission together. And then that will help whether we run a Kickstarter campaign, whether we, you know, start doing community service events in the Boston area. There's a lot of different ways to, like, kind of leverage that local community. So that's something I really want to focus on in the next couple months.
Sounds like it's pitch season for Idori.
Sure is.
Best of luck with that.
Thank you.
So as we wrap up the episode, what would you like to let the audience know? Where can they find Idori? Where can they support Idori?
So follow us on Instagram at Idorians, IDORIANS, and our website, very easy to remember, just idori.com, so IDORI.com. And definitely check out our content. We have blog posts. We have some primitive online games posted on our website.
Nice.
And we have a lot of, like, kind of resources, especially for those who are parents or early childhood educators out there. We have a lot of recommendations for activities that teach kids about sustainability. Well, our current products, the books and the stuffed animals and the learning roadmaps, aren't available commercially on our website yet. If you sign up for our newsletter on our website, that will be a great way to stay informed about future product launches. And again, like, our website has so many resources to, like, kind of get started if you want to teach your kids about sustainability. So definitely go check it out. And yeah, help us scale our impact. Help Idori, you know, our dream of real impact come to life. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Noah, for coming on Collegepreneur today. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much, Philip. Have a good one.